Happy Friday, everybody. Woo! Bella is getting so big. She's 36 pounds now, Craig.
Holy cow.
Oh, yeah. I didn't turn lights on or anything.
That's all right.
We're scrambling. Computer was, I had to restart the computer and everything. It was crazy.
We'll burn airtime for you.
What's that?
We'll burn airtime for you.
Yeah, good. Hanging to my left.
Craig Eugland. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram.
Wait, no, I used to turn into that other way to turn towards the camera. Now I got to turn this way. Martha Makashadi on Facebook. And now to my left, right? Correct?
Left.
No, keep going.
Okay. All right.
I'll introduce the guest.
We didn't know that. We didn't know that. Oh, we got to keep it rolling, Craig.
All right.
Well, Craig, you were at a great
Martha
event.
May, you're not good at small talk when the camera's on, but holy crap, you keep going.
I do. I know how to small talk. Craig, you were at a great event yesterday.
I was.
Wow.
They had teed up for the troops down at Willow Creek Golf Course, and it was awesome. Sold out as it is every year. Great program. Honored 7 World War II vets and our 8 local Gold Star families. Families that all lost
Wow.
a boy in the military at war, and it was just a good day. Lots of people there to support our troops, and some great keynote speakers, and the weather couldn't have been any better. We had a breeze that was life-saving because it was roasty, toasty warm. And the beer was cold. So.
I seen pictures of the parachuters, the jumpers, and wow, it's just beautiful, the visuals. Wow, it had to have been great for everybody on that side of town to be able to see all that. The flags flying high, of course. And yeah, that looked like the breeze was just purposely, put into the picture for you guys. So it looked beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It takes a lot of people to put that together. They had a lot of the local students were helping set up all those flags, and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers to make the event happen. So
yeah,
it was pretty awesome.
I think they said how much they raised yesterday, didn't they?
They wouldn't have had a tally yet because they have an auction, but I think over 15 years they've raised over $1 million.
Wow.
And a good portion of that stays local. So
beautiful.
I'm involved with a couple groups that are recipients of that. So
beautiful.
Those funds. So it's nice that it stays in town.
So I've been helping my boyfriend Bruce over in Wisconsin with an event that he's kind of doing for his retirement celebration. And honestly, his unit, I've gotten to know his unit more and more. Anyways, this year's their 100th anniversary of the 105th Cavalry Unit, and that was what he was part of over in Iraq in 2007, 2008.
Hey, I got to do a shout out.
Oh, go ahead.
We have one of the former participants with us, Lisa, just said, "Hey guys, enjoy watching."
Lisa! Hi, Lisa!
Morning.
Lisa! She must not be busy.
Is she watching us from
busy.
poolside?
Yeah.
Who knows, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Hi, Lisa. We miss you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. We have a special guest today, and I'm going to introduce her in a second. But nice. Next week we're going to have a pretty special show. I want to just throw that out there right away. We may, if things go to plan and the weather's fair, we're gonna go out to my backyard and have the show in my backyard.
Nice.
Oh, that'll be fun.
And then not only that, we have a guest that is flying in all the way from South Carolina to be on the show next week. So
holy buckets.
Right now our internet is stable, but we're in the country, so you guys know the drill. We might cut out, but just hang with us. We'll get back in there. But that special guest all the way from South Carolina is my daughter, Chanel.
Oh, nice.
So she is going to be on the podcast next week. Yeah.
Awesome.
That'll be fun.
You can be easy on her? Or
no,
put the hammer to
she's
her?
not going to be easy on me, I'm sure. Yeah.
Oh, this will be really fun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Double trouble.
Let it go. Let it go. It'll be fun.
Lisa said she's lakeside watching from the beach.
Not excellent.
Nice.
Yeah. Not too many people know me as well as she does, so we'll see. I have the nuke button, the button to assassinate the show right at my fingertips. So
So be gentle.
You wouldn't censor her, would you?
No, absolutely not. No, not at all. Not at all.
You're gonna give her a hard time like you give us. So
no, I'm
keep
not
her straight.
about it. Yeah, it'll be good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But let me introduce today's guest, Heather. Tell us a little bit about yourself, real quick.
Hi, I'm Heather. I live in Rochester, Minnesota. You can find me on Facebook as well. And I'm just kind of happy to be here and maybe share some of my thoughts along with all of you. And thanks for the invitation.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So Heather, I forgot to turn my volume down here, guys. Sorry. Heather, the reason let me back up. What I do is when someone sends me like a comment or they send me a message or whatever, I'm not a thumb war guy, period. And so I might comment or message, once or twice or whatever, but thumb wars, I'm not into it, period. And Heather kind of challenged me on something, and we're going to cover that as a special segment today. And I invited her, and she's actually the first one to say yes. Right? Everybody said no. So
Do I get
Way
like
to
a
go,
ribbon for
Heather.
that or something?
yeah, we have a
Yeah.
donut, a participation
Okay,
award
great.
donut.
She gets a hammer award.
Yeah.
No, that's great. No, and I commend her for stepping up, and I hope other
I do
people
too.
realize too, Matt,
Yeah.
because like you said, you've put the invitation out there. A lot of people just don't want to have a conversation, like sit down, talk about it, including our mayor and our president and different people like that. So yeah.
Yeah, so I agree. So thanks, Heather, for being here, and appreciate it.
Stepping up to
No
the
problem.
plate.
So
Yeah.
hopefully you told your people, and they can send us some messages and
Tune in, right?
Yeah.
get some harassment. Here's what we're going to cover political today. We're going to talk about the Afghanistan situation. Entertainment segment today, we're going to talk about Garth Brooks, and he cancels his tour dates. In our economic section today, we will talk about Planeteer to, did I say that right? Planetire, whatever. You all know that I'm very bad with my English, and how they just purchased $50 million in gold bars, literally physical gold bars. We're going to talk about John Marshall, a local high school, in our local segment, some things that are going on there. As we'll get into that in a minute. And then the special segment is where Heather challenged me on what I thought about it. Was the title goes, "Jews Are Lice, They Cause Typhus," and that's a quick article, but it kind of hit me because I had a conversation for about an hour long with a guy that was born, I believe he said, in 52 in Jerusalem. And so he really knows what's kind of there. He had family that were in the camps. And it was a very interesting conversation that I could have spent days with. And so that's what precipitated this article that I shared. One of the key things that I like to do, and I explained this to Heather, and you all know, I like to challenge people to think. I'll give my opinion for sure, but I'll never say, Heather, you need to think the way I do. Craig, you need to think the way I do. Martha, I'll never say that. If I do, probably better call somebody because there's something wrong, right?
That's having a stroke.
Yeah, there's something wrong. So it's about encouraging thought, and then which can sometimes lead to negative things if people allow it. But that's why we're here, working class people. I don't mind what anybody else's opinions are, as long as we are allowed the respected space, I guess, to just have those conversations. So that's why we're here. We're going to dig into the one that she pressured me on, or should we move on to
No, let's do
something
it.
else?
Let's do it.
Dig into it?
Yeah.
Right,
Break her
that's
in.
what's
We'll
Yeah.
be easy.
Yeah.
Well,
Take
no
it easy on
no
her.
promises. I told Heather, I said we're going to do the same thing we do to each other, and it's just,
Right.
that's why we're here. So the headline is "Jews Are Lice, They Cause Typhus," and again, this is I heard a personal story from a gentleman, and this is what precipitated me looking some of these things up, and I thought this was pretty unique to what his conversation was. But it goes, the Nazis often portrayed those they persecuted as vermin, parasites, or diseases. Is Nazi ideology focused on the idea that Germany's racial purity was under attack from the blood of weaker peoples, and Nazi propaganda often depicted Jews, political opponents, and others as parasitic organisms that threatened the overall health of the German racial community. During the years of the Nazi regime, German doctors frequently argued that Jews spread disease, reflecting common themes in Nazi propaganda. These medical professionals repeatedly pushed the false claim that Jews were especially responsible for outbreaks of typhus, a deadly contagious disease spread by lice. The Nazi propaganda poster featured here was created in 1941 for public display in German-occupied Poland. The Polish language words translated roughly to "Jews are lice, they cause typhus." Designed to link Jews and typhus closely together in the minds of non-Jewish Poles, the poster shows one of the feared typhus-ridden lice drawn on top of the face of a Jewish man that has made to look like a skull. And it goes on, talks about the German doctors in the Nazi regime to help advance anti-Semitic ideas. It talks about some of the different essays that came out and so on. So I won't read the whole thing, but Heather, let's hear from you first.
So I think when you posted it, I asked like what the context of it was, if it was comparing like now with COVID. I didn't get a very direct answer. I think it was more like you said you weren't insinuating anything, and then that's where it came up about the discussion. I kind of took it, I guess, as a comparison to now, because I think we're seeing that a little bit. Maybe that vaccinated versus unvaccinated Americans.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone would agree. So I think that's where I drew the comparison myself. I don't necessarily, I think it's difficult because we live in a medical community with Mayo Clinic. And I think we would be maybe just slightly irresponsible to not take some of it seriously living in a medical community, to kind of listen to some of the people around us about the true parts of what's going on. And unfortunately,
what does that mean, the true parts of what's going on?
Well, I think as far as the things they do know, you know, if someone comes to you, for example, that works at Mayo, a nurse or something to that degree, and they're like, I saw a patient that was sick and XYZ, and I've seen them suffer, which I have friends that have said that, you know, like, we've seen people suffer with COVID. It's a horrible way to die. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. And there's a lot of messaging going on around it. And I agree that that's something that's happening right now. People are kind of making it look like, well, if you're not vaccinated, you're a dangerous person. I don't necessarily agree with that. I agree with the whole, you should have a right to have the vaccine or not. But I don't know if I see it to the degree that it's in that article if you're comparing it. I mean, I think it could definitely get to that place, but I don't know.
So go ahead.
I just heard something last night that at our Mayo Clinic, there's a lunchroom for people who are vaccinated. There's a lunchroom for people who are unvaccinated.
Is that made the news, Martha May, or is that something that you heard?
I heard it from an employee that works at Mayo Clinic.
Okay.
So, yes, it's a roundabout hearsay. I haven't been there myself to see it or take pictures, but this person's credible. I can believe it. I can believe it. So now we're going to be sitting on different sides of the bus too, and different sides of the lunchroom. Wow. My family personally, is getting a little chastised. Different people I know at work, they're talking about different things with COVID card and different things like that. And right away, all the red flags go up. Stay away, stay away. You have lice. I mean, that's exactly what this feels like, you guys. Even with my own, children or grandchildren, that kind of thing. Like, it's like a taboo as a parent. You remember your children going to school and sharing hats. And I totally could relate to this article. I think it's here. I really think it's here. It's a way to divide our country. It really is a way to divide our country. If they haven't done a good enough job now we got the booster. Now we got everything else. Now we got the other variant. It's just going to keep coming. It's a way to divide everybody. So I agree with you, Heather, but I think what I've seen, and there was some pushback last night on something our mayor had commented, and someone who works in that area gave me numbers that there was only 12 COVID patients right now hospitalized. They have been keeping different numbers all along for the last year and a half. And at the height of last year, when everything else is going crazy, there was like 20 in Rochester. All these other places, numbers, different things like that. And they're like, but they're not, who is getting these numbers from Mayo Clinic? Like, who is reporting these numbers? Because she said, this is not right. And right now, she gave me the instance of, I said, I heard there was busloads of people being dropped off in different counties very close to Rochester, literally just dropped off. And she said, yeah, now there's hordes of people coming to Rochester and they're all being diagnosed with malaria. So, are people just making this stuff up? It could be, but who do we believe? Do we believe the news and Mayo Clinic that's a little biased on what they gotta, put out there or not put out there, I should say? I see it my own. I pretty soon, I am going to be sitting on the other side of the bus and putting up a fit just like everybody else or Rosa Parks did how many years ago. I mean, is our country really coming to that? I really think so. I really do. Craig?
Well, I'll start off by saying that, yes, I believe that COVID is real. My wife deals with it on a daily basis at Mayo. I've had friends that have been extremely sick from it. I've had some friends that have passed away from it, but they also had extenuating circumstances. So, but I think there's more to it than what we're being fed by our media. And I just think that everybody needs to take a step back and like we've talked about on the show is do your research, take everything you see, read, and hear with a grain of salt and kind of think outside the box. Like I said, it's not like I don't think it's real, but to me, it feels, especially when you get an article like that, learn from your history. Is this a sign of something that's coming? I don't know. I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist or go down a wormhole like that, but I sure hope it's not a direction that our country's going, that we're being led into something that we can't back out of. And I've got friends that say, God, you got to get the vaccine. What do you think of not getting it? And I've got friends in the medical field that they had to get it because of work, but they don't push it on anybody. And it's a personal choice. And if you want to get it, get it. And if not, not. And I'm going to go back to what happened to all the flu numbers from last year.
Yep.
And how are there like such a reduction in deaths from the common cold, but yet those same numbers kind of balanced out a little bit more from COVID. Just sit back and look at the big picture and use some critical thinking and
the agenda.
And I don't want to just go down an agenda road and think, our country's out to get us and da-da-da-da-da, but just start thinking about this stuff. And we've talked about it probably every show, but I don't know.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I don't agree with this article. I think I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, like, I don't agree with this in any way, that this is okay. I just don't necessarily
you
think
don't agree with that it's okay for them to do what they
right.
did.
Oh yeah,
for
absolutely.
Nazi,
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
I don't want to get that kind of vibe going here. That's not what I don't agree with that. That's completely wrong. And you look back on things in history, and I mean, there used to be a time when doctors said smoking was good for you too, and I mean, things evolve so quickly. I think how I see it is I fear that it could go too far the one way or the other, kind of like Craig said. You want to try to keep some sanity through it all, and I think it's difficult. And I almost see COVID personally as more of like this psychological thing or like a spiritual warfare, so to speak, because everyone's pinned so busy debating against each other. I think they're missing the bigger picture.
Yep.
And there could be so many other things going on while we're all fighting about if you're vaccinated or not. And there could be something else brewing, and we're just all so busy fighting about, I think it's more important to just be respectful, be compassionate. And I think if it's going to teach us anything, it should just be, it sounds kind of cliche, but to kind of love one another and get back to where we were.
Very nice.
Right? Because if divide and conquer is like the oldest thing in the book, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we're kind of all falling into the pit, I think, even more than we had before, if that makes sense.
No, that's great.
And I think that vaccinated or not, I mean, that the information's changing so quickly, so rapidly. I don't think anybody who's even educated can hardly keep up. So I think because the information changes, your opinions and perspectives are allowed to change also. Because otherwise you're kind of putting one person in a box. And I know for me personally, my opinions changed a lot back and forth. you know, and there's been fear and there's been days I didn't have fear, but you know, if you're feeding into the monster, so to speak,
the hype.
that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
very
mean,
good.
but I do also think it is important, at least for us that live here locally, to kind of take some stock, just a little bit, in what the medical field is saying, to, you know, not to be irresponsible about it, but, you know, to be mindful that it is still something. And there's so many conspiracy theories,
And
you know.
You're right. It does go back to wash your hands. If you're sick, stay home, cover your mouth. You know, I mean, it goes back to that. That's what we were taught in grade school. I mean, you know, wash your hands, you know, and all that is not in the forefront of preventive or the opportunity for another option besides the vaccine. And I think that's where my hypocrisy with all those big pictures coming from is, you know, there was a meme out there that said, well, if it hadn't been for a vaccine, we wouldn't have killed all the polo
Polo and measles and all that
yeah,
stuff.
all that and everything. But those vaccines had a lot more years of study and they were FDA approved. I mean, this isn't even classified as a legal vaccine yet. So we're just seeing a lot of stuff flip flop, like you said, Heather, back and forth. Where who do you believe and what do you believe? Except you are the
Exactly.
one that's accountable to God. You are the one that's accountable, you know, to yourself. That kind of thing. At the end of the day, and we have talked about that where there's just so much hype into everything getting played. And what's the I just say that what's the agenda of the person pushing all this information?
And that's my struggle, is the optics of all of this is just, it scares me because it's being pushed so hard, and people say, well, excuse me, follow the science. Well, the science isn't exact. It's ever evolving, and you can't argue that. The science has changed. Doctors used to say that it was okay to smoke. We know that that's not true, but they followed the science until they figured out that their science was incorrect.
Right.
So I don't like the fact that people are being shamed for having the vaccine or not having the vaccine, or wearing a mask or not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
I've said it before, and Matt gave me crap because it was Matt and I and 3 women in here, but it's like, watch your own bobber. Worry about yourself. Be conscious of other people. If you're worried about things, stay away from others.
Yeah.
Also, on the flip side, don't be a jerk and go coughing on people. If you're sick, stay home. That's a no-brainer. That's 2-year-old education right there. It's just the optics of how everything is so focused on COVID. Like you said, what are they distracting us from?
Yeah.
It's the flavor of the week, but this flavor has been going on for a year and a half.
Right.
What are they distracting us from?
Exactly.
And that scares the crap out of me.
And I think it's interesting too. Like last weekend I had the opportunity to talk to different people, both people that worked at Mayo, outside of Mayo, from out of town, different things. And I just kind of threw it out there about the shot. And most people I encountered, the first thing they said, they're like, no way. Like, I don't trust our government. I don't trust this. And so it seems like there's a majority out there of people that do have a lot of distrust. And there is people that are on the other side of that too. But I think you tend to gravitate towards maybe what you tend to believe to some
Your
degree.
environment, I think, too, of you know where you work and where you live plays a big part. I just say this just because I spend a lot of time over in a small little town in Wisconsin. There's a huge Mennonite Amish community over there. If you said something about a vaccine, you'd be called a crazy woman. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, they're riding down in a buggy with their kids on their lap. No helmet, no nothing, you know, no seatbelt. If you said the word vaccine, it'd be like, what on earth are you talking about? So, you know, it's some of where we, like you said, in the community that we live or where we are because of Mayo, that maybe are we a little more apt to be persuaded because of that? That's what I would say too. Are we a little more apt to follow that path because of them? You know, and I'm not saying strong arm, but I'm just saying because of their influence on this community and the state and the country like that. You know, you got to look at it that way too.
You guys ready for me?
Absolutely.
Bring it on.
I got a text
Did you?
saying, why are you being so quiet on this one?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
why
I'm
are
not.
you? Okay. Come on, Matt, bring it.
Heather, to answer your question, yes, I think that there's a lot of correlation to what this article is talking about and what did happen, what can be proved. Some things that are scary to me is that I'm not sure if anybody here remembers when the, I guess he called himself the president of Iran, had said that he was going to erase history on what happened in the Holocaust, that it didn't happen and all those kinds of things. There are people on the planet today that still want to see that kind of stuff happen, which tells me an awful lot that it is one of those things that I guess when they're trying to erase history or say that it didn't happen and look the other way, as you put it, and things like that, that's a very dangerous place to be.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. And so, and having this conversation, this guy, you know, I think he was born in 52 and in Jerusalem, spent 20 years of his life, still has family over there. It was very interesting to hear, like obviously he wasn't in the Holocaust, but his family was. His family survived. He was a child of two people that survived the Holocaust. I'm getting emotional just thinking about that conversation. And this is really scary times. This nearly 80-year-old man is saying, you know, how relatable this currently was pretty remarkable to me. COVID's real. What's to be determined is whether or not COVID was, and this isn't a conspiracy anymore, whether COVID was intentionally released. We know that it was intentionally made. Whether or not it was intentionally released is to be determined. I don't know if we'll ever know. It might take us 50 years to know. It's real. There are both sides of the aisle. Get the vaccine, don't get the vaccine, right here in our own medical community. There's some research that did come out that the highest percentage of people that have chosen not to get the vaccine are PhDs. And so I'm like, that's interesting. So probably do the research, probably understand. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer at all. I've chosen not to get it because I've talked to two doctors who know my medical history, which is remarkably good. Thank the good Lord. And that it probably would be more detrimental to me to get it than to not have it. I want people to think about this reality that's happening because it is real. And let me show you why it's real. The segregation is getting pretty crazy. You guys can look at the screen that we have here. With COVID-19 cases on the rise this summer and the vaccination leveling, New York City will start requiring a wide range of venues to check patrons and workers for their vaccination status. On Tuesday, August 17th, only proof of vaccination will grant access to indoor dining, fitness clubs, and shows at indoor entertainment venues. Wow. And I could go on, and there's a few different articles very similar to this. And so the problem here for me is somebody has a medical condition, they've had a job for 30 years, and they live in New York City, and they can't get the vaccination because of their medical problems. This law is literally written, the way they're trying to, this mandate is literally written and trying to get this into law, they would lose their job. Flat and simple. No, I'll fight. And that's the reason for inalienable rights by our Creator. What we're going to talk about Afghanistan, and we'll talk about this more. They're a 19 and
so it's kind of like those people have lice, right, Matt? It
is very much like they're segregating people based off of their medical decisions for their own personal, which I don't have the right to know. If someone gets the vaccine or doesn't get the vaccine, they can tell me, that's great, but I don't have the right to demand it.
Nobody has
the right to demand it, right? And that's the point of it, is it's getting to the place of they're starting to demand it and segregate, right? Now, think about this path in New York City alone. And I'm not going to pull up the numbers, but there's around 40% of the Black community that's vaccinated. So that's the lowest by far. The vaccine is free. They have easy access to it.
And incentives.
And so only 40% of the Black community. Now follow this path. They want no voter ID. They say that that's racist.
Right.
Okay. So how bad will something like this blow up when you start segregating people based on medical decisions that they have decided to do for best for their family? There's a mass exodus in New York, mass exodus in California. I've seen it firsthand in both places. I was in New York when they shut down in March last year. All those things. I mean, I literally was wondering if I was going to be able to get a flight out of there. I mean, the airport was a ghost town. So I when you see these things, when you read about history, when you look at all that kind of stuff, and the combination, to me, it starts out as a very small, like, vaccine. Oh, by the way, the vaccine isn't a vaccine; it's just a shot.
Right.
It might help it. It might not. Oh, by the way, it doesn't actually prevent the spread of COVID.
Yeah, there's.
Oh, by the way, it does, and so you can go down all these paths. So why do they push it so hard? Oh, sure, there are people that have had less severe symptoms. I absolutely agree with that. I know people who have passed away with COVID, but for the last, frankly, 30 years of their life was a miracle in itself that they were able to live through some of their health conditions. So you can look at it a lot of different ways, and we each, our paradigm, our lens is, like you say, is formed by how we grew up, what our beliefs are, and whatever else. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not saying verbatim quoting you, but so with some of those things, and the combination of this is it doesn't end here.
Right.
It doesn't end here.
Well, and the thing is, too, is I think everyone's at a point, more or less, like, people are discussing it like you are here, and people have opinions, but what are you going to do about it? I think that's the next step people have to be at, because it's like, you look on the news and there's some things they censor, like there's people protesting in places like in Europe and stuff about mandatory passport vaccinations. You don't see it here, not in mass numbers. There's nothing happening in Rochester.
I know what you do. You go down to your city council meeting and you let your city council members know how to vote. That's what you do. You write and email them, and you show up at a city council meeting with signs, and you're out on the street and the sidewalk and the steps letting your city council know. And that's how it starts. Like, it's a
Martha
big level.
May, hang on, let her
level.
finish. Let her
Sorry,
finish.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's just that, I mean, I think that's the point people are at with certain things, whether it's one way or the other. So it's like, myself included, if I don't like the idea of sending my kid to school in a mask, but at the same time, I know I'm not capable of homeschooling my kid. So what do? Do I protest by not sending her in a mask and wait till they send her home?
Right.
I mean, she doesn't like it, both psychologically and physically speaking, but I think the gist of it is, like, you need like a mass number of people to kind of be on the same page in order to make an impact, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So, it's like we can talk about it all day, but the truth is we don't really know. Like you said, the truth isn't going to come out for so long. So in the moment, everyone's making the best choices that they have with the information they have available to them.
But that's the point.
Right.
We should be able to make the choices, and they're not. A lot of people are trying to do what they can to not allow us to make those choices.
Right. But I also think there's a part that's like psychological. That's why I said it's like spiritual, psychological kind of, warfare, I guess you could call it, kind of, or, it's like head games, because one day something changes. I don't know about you guys, but I felt like, I don't know if I'm coming or going half the time through COVID, right? Depending on what I listen to and who I talk to. So I think there's really nobody that has a right or wrong at this point. It's just kind of like you have to take your convictions and run with them, and then try to make the difference you can with your voice. But I think that's the point I'm making, is that nobody knows what side of history we're really on, because we're kind of living in it. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So it's like, we can't say, well, I mean, I know it's another way too, right? I mean, I've had people on my Facebook talk about, very intelligent, educated people talking about how the vaccine is like trying to make us connected to AI and different things like that, which sometimes you can believe it if you read enough articles and they make a good argument. but it's like, what part of that's real and what part of that isn't? I'm not trying to get another topic, but I'm just saying, it's so much misinformation. So when they say misinformation, it goes both ways.
Let me read some. It's giving us some issues here too. So hang on with us here, people. Appreciate it. Jackie's here to say hello. She's awake, I guess.
Jackie's in the house. Oh,
Yeah.
nice that she could wake up.
So this was written in, I believe, approximately 80 AD. He causes all the small and the great, the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves to be given a mark on their right hand or their forehead. He provides that no one will be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name.
Wow.
So there's that too, that a person could look at, written a couple thousand years ago. Literally, this article in New York is nearly that.
Right. It has a lot of similarities. And that's why I said I think sometimes it's more like the spiritual warfare, because I think we're kind of, I don't want to get into biblical terms, but I think in some ways we're kind of fighting against these evil entities in a way, and you don't really know who they are, right? Because evil is deceptive for a reason. Right. I mean, the devil's a good liar.
Right.
The devil doesn't come dressed as the devil, right? I mean, the devil comes in disguise. And so it's kind of like the devil's in the details kind of thing. And so I think it's fair to say that none of us really know the absolute truth at this point in time. And I think for anyone to say they know the absolute truth is a little, just slightly irresponsible, just a little bit, because we don't all know the exact truth.
Who's saying that they know the absolute truth?
Nobody per se.
No, that's not true.
But I mean,
Fauci says he knows.
well,
Keyboard warriors know.
I mean,
No,
Yeah.
I'm not being facetious. I'm being
Right.
serious.
right.
He says he knows.
Yeah, and he also gets paid like twice what Biden gets paid on a yearly salary.
He's the highest
Yeah.
paid government employee.
Right. And I don't necessarily say that Fauci knows the truth, but I think,
He thinks
like
he
I
does.
said, I think it all is one and the same, really, because it's like, who do you trust? What do you know? Like, you have to take
Have you
the
seen the
best
Fauci
information you have.
mashup?
I haven't.
Okay, it's pretty
Mashup?
good. Everybody go to YouTube and look that up. Not now. Wait for the end of the show.
No, I got to hammer and like and share right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Comment. We'll read your comments at the end.
Yeah.
I've gotten some texts, but so the mashup is literally Fauci saying, going through and what he talks about, and he literally flops all over the place.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the point of a lot of this is that if you can't be open and honest and come forward and say, I don't know what the bleep is going on,
Right.
but let's try this. We think this is going to work. But instead they come out, and I say they, like the Faucis,
Right.
come out and say, and demand you do this or else.
Right.
And then next week says, you do this or else. And it's opposite.
Right.
So we've lost confidence and trust.
Oh, absolutely.
Exactly.
And it happened fast.
Yeah. And once you lose the trust, you don't know what to believe anymore.
Exactly.
Fauci fast.
Right. Totally. And so it's just one of those things that it's like, you're absolutely right. No one knows the whole truth. It's impossible to know the whole truth. There are certain things that are facts. We know that this was a manufactured thing. We don't know exactly where it came from. It's a lot of looks like China, of course. And I mean, there's been all kinds of different articles on that. So anyway, that's what's scary about this. That's what's similar to me about this. That's why I want people to think about it. Just stop and think about it. Like, look at all these things. You want to get a vaccine? That's fantastic. Get a vaccine. I don't want to get a vaccine. That's fantastic. I don't want to get a vaccine. Maybe I will in a month. I don't know.
I will say someone in my family, so one of my children decided to get the vaccine, and I gave her that choice because she's older. And the first dose anyway. I told her to do her research, and she chose to get it. And I was really nervous about it at first, but then at the same time, she was really anxious about it. So I let her follow through with the shot. Judge me if you will. But
No judgment here.
But the point is I noticed there was a family member of mine who wouldn't interact with me on social media as much because of my views on COVID and not wanting to get the vaccine or thinking there's more to it. And that person, as soon as my daughter got the shot, unblocked me from Facebook. So I thought that was intriguing because I was like, wow, like, is that all it took? This is in my own family, and I'm
Right.
not calling my
That's what
put
I'm saying.
anybody
It's
under the
like,
bus.
No,
but,
I get it.
but I mean, it was kind of stunning to me because it was like,
That's
wow.
that's sad.
A little bit.
It to me to hear that, and it's way too common. Jackie and Bella want to be on TV.
it's our timing.
They're playing. Jackie,
They're hurdling.
you stay down. I want to end this segment with this. We've gone really long in this segment. Thanks for watching. We're going to get into some other articles in news. Afghanistan's coming up next, but polio was first in epidemic in 1894, and a lot of people are. We related it to that in this show. Martha May, I think you did, and so 1894 was a first U.S. epidemic. And then in 1954, let's see here. 1954, massive polio vaccine trial begins in the U.S. And I think I know people who paralyzed from polio. And I think that's the idea of this, and to relate it to, people saying the polio, if people, and I've seen these specifically, they say, if people on the right were around and they had social media when polio came out and the vaccine, and we all have polio right now. Well, let's look. It took them 60 years to do the vaccine for polio. 60. We did this one in 6 months. And they want to put it in every person that they possibly can. That's interesting to me. Those are facts.
And I will say, I've seen several different articles about why did it happen so fast, and I'm not agreeing that it's safe because of these things, but a lot of the roadblocks were removed to allow it to happen fast. And that was done by a previous administration. Instead of pharmaceutical companies keeping their information close, they shared their information so that they could all have a chance to find this vaccine, or to produce this vaccine at an incredibly fast rate of speed. And there were other things, the approval process was streamlined, or not the FDA approval, but the earlier approvals. So President Trump did a lot of things to really push this through as fast as possible because of the threat of it. But can you push 60 years of research into 6 months or 8 months? That's awfully quick.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that's necessarily a good or a bad. I'm just saying that you cannot compare the two.
Absolutely.
And so many people are
comparing
polio to this and the vaccine and all that. You just can't do it.
And it's not a vaccine.
It's not a vaccine. And now, was it yesterday they just said, or the day before, about a third booster?
Yep.
In less than a year?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's interesting. There's so many things that are interesting. Look, there's this conspiracy, and I'm not saying I believe it, but it's certainly plausible. Well, so what does Fauci know that we don't know? And why are they pushing this vaccine so hard? Is this something that is going to end the world? COVID-19? You know what I'm saying?
I was going to say, the people I talked to last week, a lot of people really believe that. And they're not negligent people. I mean, they're not like the people you would think. If that makes sense. Like, they're educated, well-spoken.
They believe that
people.
COVID is going to end the world.
So some people believe the vaccine in itself is population
The
control.
vaccine itself. Yeah. Okay.
But at the same time, I think when I say about those evolving opinions, I think it's fair to say that it's just as dangerous I mean, it's so hard to know what to believe, but it's always good, I think, to take a step back and look at the whole picture too. It's like, how many people would have to be in on that in order for that to succeed? How many people would you have to? I mean, I know we're comparing things.
You need two.
Holocaust, but at the same time, especially like how many people at Mayo Clinic would have to know? How many researchers and scientists would have to know that there's something dangerous and then continue? Does that make sense? To participate, that would take a lot. I mean, a lot.
It would take two, really. You'd have to get somebody to create the. So we know Fauci's involved in vaccine money, right? We you know that, right?
Right, and so is Mayo Clinic.
yeah, for sure. A lot of people
they get funded by some of those companies, yeah.
So there's that. So you'd need basically two people, one to create the vaccine and one to create the disease.
But you still need participants.
That's the media.
It's the media, sure. And you can spend 40 whatever years like Fauci and create this. How many years did he work on an HIV vaccine? Doesn't exist. He spent 30 years doing that.
And he pushed a cure that was killing the patients.
Right. You know, so there's a lot of these things, right? So you need two people, one to create the vaccine, one to create the disease, or at least a path to create the vaccine and the disease, right? And you really wouldn't need that many people. You would just need to convince other people. Look this way. Look over here.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, there's a lot of conspiracies, and I don't know. I'll say this, and I've said this before on the show. I didn't believe in conspiracies until last year. Period. Not on a mass scale, right? I mean, on a small scale, sure, but I think there's a lot involved here that we may never know.
Well, and every conspiracy has a little truth to it.
You bet.
For sure.
And every lie has a little truth.
For sure.
And so it's like, I think that's what makes it more of this like mind psychological thing. Right. And I think we're kind of like, sometimes we're kind of participating in our own demise in a way, because we're kind of splitting ourselves apart, if you think about it. Because we're always like, read this, don't do that. And then we see this and it's like, oh, the media, this. And that's what I mean about what can people do to come together more in a hands-on way versus, like you said, sitting behind a keyboard. And that's part of the reason why you're like, well, what changed? Like, why did I come on here or whatever, or agree to it? Because I'm willing to talk about that. Like you said, and some people are just going to sit behind their keyboard and be like, well, I know the whole truth. It's like, you don't know the whole truth. I don't know the whole truth. But if we, like you said, if we discuss it in a free setting where it's like, you know, I'm not going to judge Martha May because she didn't get the vaccine, or she's not going to judge me because I am. So you can't go both ways, right?
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
That's
super hypocritical.
A civilized conversation.
So here, there's been research done that, and I'm just gonna say this hypothetically because I don't have the numbers in front of me, but there has been, I've read it. There's been research done on people on the left of what they label themselves on the left and whatever, and people on the right. So people on the left, I think it's somewhere near 80% of the people on the left get their information from a very small range of sources. CNN's a huge one, huge for the people on the left. And you know, so it's in the 70 some percentile. People on the right, only about, I think it's pushing 60% get their news sources from one similar, like a Fox News or Newsmax or whatever. So people on the right tend to be more read on what's kind of happening and what's going on with a lot of different things, because they're looking at all these different sources. Their loyalty is not to one place, whereas a huge percentage of people on the left, it's one, all they're getting is one source of information.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. And so in my own life, I get messages probably early on in the show at least once a week, but now probably every other week or so. I get people messaging me, stop just watching Fox News. And I very rarely watch anything or read. I actually don't watch news. I mainly read it, right? And it's very rarely Fox News. It's very rarely CNN. But And so I mean, I listen to podcasts like Pod Save America, and I've mentioned that to you guys on the show before. Pod Save America is literally people who wrote Obama's speeches. So what do you think their opinions are? And I listen to Destiny. He's very left progressive. A few others that I can't come to. Vosh. He's very left progressive, social, almost socialist. And so, and there's, I listen to Tim Pool, and I listen to, Buck Sexton, I think, and a couple of things. So it's one of those things that if we can get our information from a lot of different places, then we can think about it and make the judgment. But if we're getting our news source from one place, then all of a sudden you think that somebody that thinks differently is insane. Right. And that's what we see right now, is that these people that are these keyboard warriors, I think you called them, is they're getting their news source, whether they be from the right or from the left, they're getting their news sources from one place, primarily. And that's the hard part. That's one of the reasons I started this show specifically, is let's look at all of it.
Right.
So
I do the same thing when I watch the news. I actually will listen to CNN, and then I'll flip over to something else and then see the contrast and the facts or how it's reported,
It's mind blowing.
Yeah, it's always a little more dramatic on CNN,
Framing is huge.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'll make a comment about the booster shot. And wink, wink. I don't know if this is something that Apple was involved in, but maybe it's just like a program upgrade, and they just have to keep redoing the vaccine. That's a joke. It's a joke.
Bang. Where's the gong?
That was horrible. I'll take myself out now.
All right, let's get into Afghanistan. Biden, he said, I would have sought Afghanistan withdraw even without Trump's Taliban deal. President Joe Biden revealed in a new interview that he still would have sought to pull American forces out of Afghanistan, even if former President Donald Trump had not struck a deal with the Taliban last year that paved the way for an eventual U.S. troop withdrawal. I would have tried to figure out how to withdraw those troops. Yes, Biden told ABC News George Stephanopoulos in an interview conducted Wednesday. Segments of the interview aired Wednesday on ABC's World News Tonight and Thursday on Good Morning America. The president's acknowledgement comes after he and top aides have argued the White House's hands were tied by the Trump-era agreement brokered last February. Blah, blah, blah. Let's get into this. Who's going to go? This article's too long.
It's a big article.
We did
talk about this about 6 weeks, about a month, ending Afghanistan on September 11th. Ironically, that date and what that meant to a lot of Americans and everything. And then now everything that's kind of come out. There's a lot of visuals out there in the last week of the airport in Afghanistan and what's going on. My own son and family members and people close to me served over there. You can hear both sides of the story. Basically, yes, did President Trump have a plan to pull out? Would it have been a different plan than Biden? Yes. He admitted it himself right here. And he's kind of flip-flopped a little bit too in the last couple of days since things have happened. But basically, are we just handing over everything that we just
fought 20 years for?
Yeah.
And it's so much of a thing in our culture right now is erasing our history. And I'm sorry, but with the pullout of Vietnam and all those images that are very similar, is how did we as a country, how did our military, and how did our politicians not learn from the withdrawal from Vietnam?
Do you have allergies?
I don't
My
know.
allergies have been killing me for a few days.
I was outside.
So
all day
windy
yesterday.
yesterday. Yeah, all the pollen blowing around yesterday it's killing me.
Yeah.
But sorry, go ahead.
No, that's fine. Sorry,
back-
the
Yeah.
clumped. I, this is on Biden's watch, and
You bet. Doesn't matter
he-
if he is in office 1 day or 1 year or 100 years. You bet.
he cannot blame the previous administration for how our withdrawal 9 months into his presidency was completed. If his advisors were wrong, then they need to be held accountable. But this should have been done in a much better way. And I'm going to go back to other conversations we've had. Is you want to see, you think that the January 6th insurrection was insurrection? That was insurrection. Armed people in taking over their country's capital. It was just done so inappropriately, and we're going to be back there. It's, I look at.
We're already going back.
Yeah,
we're not gonna be. It's on its way.
Thousands
Troops
of
are on their way.
going over
Right.
Marines,
Do I
yeah.
want our troops to be in harm's way forever? Absolutely not. I don't want to stand at another funeral for a military. But look at our history. We have bases in Germany 75 years after that war. We still have bases in Korea. We still have bases in Japan. It holds stability for those portions of the world. Are we losing military in Germany and Korea and Japan via war or the enemy? No, we're losing troops from accidents that could have happened anywhere else, unfortunately. But we were situated. We had a firm hold of that portion of the world. We had a stable base that we could. It's a deterrent for the Taliban or whoever else. And now that we're gone, it's party night. Parents are gone for the weekend. We're going to party, and that's exactly what's going to happen if we don't take control of what we had.
Everybody's seen the people hanging on the airplane,
Yeah.
taking off, falling to their death.
So desperate. So desperate.
They have identified one of them. A 19-year-old kid is one of them who clung to the plane and fell to his death. How long has the war been going on?
20 years.
How old is he?
19.
It's crazy.
He heard the stories.
Of what happened.
Listen to this carefully. Think about what is going on in his mind. He heard the stories. He didn't experience the Taliban personally. He heard the stories, and they were so powerful that he decided to hang on to a plane and drop out of the sky and die, than stay there with the Taliban. Think about that.
Give some
He hasn't
perspective.
he hasn't experienced it personally. He just heard the stories of how bad it would be. He's like, it's not
That's
worth it.
desperation.
Massive desperation, and that's sad.
Yeah. And-
So, can I just want to read something quick. So, when we talk about the Taliban, this kind of alludes to that, where we knew or we had hoped that a small group of forces would be still left in that country to maintain what our country has established for 20 years. And even going back to 2018, there was a little bit of riffraff and the Taliban was acting up and doing things. President Trump said, no.
Hitting the table.
I know President Trump either said, no, you stop right now or we're sending them back in. And sure enough, he did. Those guys were all down south. They were ready to come home. And sure enough, they sent them back over because the Taliban wouldn't stop what they were doing. We were on the proactive side. We had the control of it. And now we're on the reactive side. We're begging. I mean, I look at it like this. We're begging the Taliban, oh, please, will you stop? Oh, please, you stop. Compared to being on the offensive side. Now our president and our country is on the defensive side. So I just want to read you this. This is from Special Forces, United States Special Forces, what a true believer is. Somewhere, a true believer is training to kill you. He is training with minimum food or water in austere conditions. He doesn't worry about what we're out to do. His rucksack weighs what it weighs, and he runs until the enemy stops chasing him. The true believer doesn't care how hard it is. He knows he either wins or he dies. He doesn't go home at 1700. He is home. He only knows what cause he has. So
There was a
that's who we're
military, a
fighting.
former, I think he's a former military. I don't know if he was a Marine or I have no idea. I shouldn't even say it. I can look his name up. I don't want to say it right now because I might get it wrong. And he's been pushed on this. And he said, if they have a gun in their hand, we need to put a bullet in their chest, period. He was over in Afghanistan for a long time. And that just came out, I think yesterday I think it was yesterday. And he's gotten a lot of criticism for that, but he's like, look, I was there and these 10-year-old kids were killing people, their own people.
That's what they're raised to do. That's all they know.
Yeah. And it's like to make a decision to take the life of one person to literally, not likely, but literally save potentially even thousands, but at least they know dozens of lives, because most of them, by the time they are killed, they have killed dozens of people. That's crazy.
Very crazy.
And what a little bit of change of subject, but still talking about this is I'm on a text thread with quite a few friends that served over there multiple times, and we were talking about the refugees coming here, and Governor Wallace has welcomed them to Minnesota, and we've had a little bit of a debate on that.
Get your house in order.
Get your house in order. But the one thing that we all agreed on is we have to get the Afghanis that helped our troops out of there, because they will be killed. And it judge, jury, trial. They get the bullet in the head. If there's any inkling that they helped our troops, they're going to be killed. And we need to get them here. But then the flip side of that is